So thanks to everyone who's joining us today, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on wherever you might be. GHEI is pleased to bring to you today this final webinar in this road safety series. My name is Cindy Olivares, and I'm Director of Communications for the Road Safety Program at GHEI. Today's webinar is centered on maximizing policy impact after the win. So we'll hear from our speakers on how to potentially navigate the challenges coalitions face in the months and years following a policy win. Our partners at the Ugandan Ministry of Works and Transport will discuss the government's role in road safety and the importance of partnering with civil society organizations to achieve success. The Coalición por la Movilidad Segura in Ecuador will be addressing the 2 years of work that the Ecuadorean Coalition has dedicated to ensuring that the transit law regulations are put into practice utilizing WHO best practices. Next slide, please. Okay, so our agenda here provides a brief overview of how we'll spend our time today. We have 1.5 hours of total time, and this will include a brief recap of the framework to achieve sustainable policy impact for road safety. We'll also talk about communication strategies that might support policy implementation. We'll definitely be hearing about case studies or campaign highlights directly from in-country partners in Uganda and Ecuador. And then finally, we'll have 2 breakout sessions led by our guest speakers, Judith Karara and Sofía Gordón. Next slide. And then our speakers today will be Judith Karara. She's with the Office of the Ugandan Ministry of Works and Transport. Sofía Gordón, representative Coalición por la Movilidad Segura in Ecuador. Jake Pally, Associate Director for Advocacy and Road Safety in Latin America. And Luke Thielander, who's Senior Digital Director with Global Wave Digital. And then just a quick overview of this webinar series. We started this back in the summer, I believe July was the first month. And so GHEI's goal in coordinating this was to guide participants through the different campaign advocacy phases, from building issue awareness to refining campaigns after a policy win. And during each webinar, we've had the opportunity to hear from different partners in various parts of the world. This has included the Philippines, Mexico, Colombia, and India, and today, Ecuador and Uganda. Each of the hosted webinars, including this one, is complemented with online materials that can be used for your road safety campaign. Materials include data points to assist with messaging to social media graphic templates for your social media platforms. And all of these items will live on our website. We'll show you exactly where today so that you can pull them as needed. And then for this series, we had a total of 3 webinars, including this one. See the dates and the topics covered here. So our first one was end of July. That one was titled Getting Started and Creating Urgency in Media Advocacy. We had our second one in September, focused on calls to action for policy advocacy, and our third and final one today. And for this webinar, we'd like to discuss with participants how to first track the process of policy adoption. We want to identify tactics to defend policy change, and then think about communication strategies and tactics that might also support policy implementation. And then finally, hear from advocates who have already successfully monitored and identified gaps during implementation. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jake Pally. Jake?
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thanks so much for this opportunity. So I'm going to take some time and talk about a few slides that talk about specifically achieving sustainable policy impact for road safety. Normally, I don't read from slides, but I'm not sure everybody here speaks English. So I'll read off the slide and give some examples and walk everybody through. So one of the things is that we see here that there's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as if everything follows a nice, neat path. And that's not necessarily the case. Policy work, advocacy work is messy, and sometimes you're going from step 3 to step 5 to step 2 You never quite know. But the way we have it laid out here is one has to prepare for policy change. And I remember back when I started the road safety work in 2020 that a lot of the preparation had been done. So GHEI worked with lawyers in each country. I work in Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and we did the landscape analysis of what the legal frameworks were. So are there laws? And then the question is, okay, well, are the laws good? Do they meet WHO best practice? And another question is, well, what are the gaps? And then how do we address those gaps? And then maybe we advocate for a new law, maybe we advocate for a new regulation that fills these gaps and addresses things so that ultimately best practice is put in place. And then you start preventing crashes, you start reducing deaths on the road, and you start reducing injuries. So a key step is assessing the landscape, the political landscape, the legal landscape, engaging impacted communities, civil society, government. That's really key. Without civil society, you really can't move. And working with the government is also important. Figuring out who the allies are in government, determining policy priorities. Again, that comes from the legal assessment that you do or the political assessment that you do. And you start developing campaign plans, benchmarks, enhancing impact through civil society, through your allies, both in civil society and government. Facilitating policy change, well, informing stakeholders and decision makers is key, using fact sheets, using evidence, mobilizing, engaging diverse constituencies or groups, allies, networks, and then revising and protecting legislation. Implementation, well, develop and adopting strong regulations, educating the public, ensure a strong enforcement plan is in place, monitor for policy or compliance gaps, institutionalizing the new law, secure sustainable funding, addressing compliance and enforcement, defending policies, sustaining civil society engagement, invest in public education campaigns, and then protect, expand, and innovate. So really focusing on these steps 4 and 5. I think what happens in the advocacy process is that as you advocate for a new law and as you come up with a draft, things look really good. And then it goes through the political process where things are watered down, things are diminished, and you probably get a law or you probably get a regulation that doesn't quite meet best practice, or maybe it meets 4 out of the 5 criteria that you've established. And so I think that's where everything turns again. So I know we're going to talk about Ecuador in a second. We've been working on implementing rules and regulations for a 2021 transit law. We've been working on this for a really long time. And we keep on pushing, well, the coalition keeps on pushing for best practices in the regulation. And then the government comes out with a draft of the regulation and it's not there. It doesn't quite meet best practice. So then the coalition goes back, meets with the National Transit Agency and says, okay, well, you're missing this, this, and this. So a couple things. It's really important to celebrate what you do get. It's also really important to analyze what is in any future law, any future regulation, because then I think that would take us to step 5, which is protecting, expanding, and innovating. You celebrate what you get, but then you immediately start thinking about the next step, what's missing, and then that will take you back to step 1, and then you continue with this process. And I think we'll hear more about that later. Can we go to the next slide? Monitoring policy implementation. So if and when a law does get passed, regulation as well, a policy requires continued engagement to ensure it's being implemented. This requires structures in place such as implementation plans, enforcement plans, monitoring and reporting systems. And that's where the allies come in as well. That's where the coalition that you've built with civil society, that's where the allies you've cultivated with government really come into play, because how else can you ensure good implementation, good enforcement of the laws or the regulations that you've helped put into place? How to do this, understanding and tracking the process of the policy adoption and implementation. Data is really key. Everything we do is evidence-based, so making sure you have good data is really important. Promoting the results and impact to stakeholders. Again, after looking at the evidence, understanding in a fact sheet or putting in a fact sheet infographic, putting it on social media or talking to policymakers, decision makers, and saying, hey, look, the laws that you helped put into place or regulations you've helped put into place, this is making a difference. This is saving a life. Promoting the results, collecting. We, as part of the Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety, we work with a huge network of partners, Johns Hopkins, Vital Strategies, embedded staff as well, through Vital Strategies who work with city governments. They can help us collect information on implementation. Ensure budgets are being allocated. We in Latin America haven't worked too much on this, but another key step is that if the law does require funding, let's say, for example, that all of a sudden a national surveillance agency is put into place to collect standardized data on crashes, injuries, deaths, that kind of agency would require money. So making sure that the law has a financing mechanism can be really important. And sustaining public engagement. I think a really good example of this is just when I grew up, I just knew to put on a seatbelt, and I got that from my mom. I got that from my dad. So it's less about the law eventually, and it becomes more about force of habit. We just knew to put on a seatbelt, and that's great. I'm not sure everybody is at that same point, and that's where public engagement, that's where social media, that's where getting out the message is so important. I remember my mom, this sounds bad. My mom was driving, we were speeding, we were nowhere close to home, and we were speeding because we're actually in a construction zone. And so the speed limit came way down. We just didn't know. And the police officer pulled us over and they were about to give us a ticket, but the police officer looked into the car and every single one of us had a seatbelt on. And so he said, well, good work. And then they let us go. But again, I think it just speaks to the fact that at some point, the laws that you pass, the regulations pass, they have a purpose, and the purpose is to save lives. And then that filters down, and it just becomes second nature, and you know what to do. Next slide. Defending the policy. I think there's another really good example here in Mexico. So there's always going to be political factors, political forces. So ensuring policies are maintained, expanded, invested, that's critical. And again, you might pass a law, you might pass a regulation, but then you're always thinking about what next? What gaps are there? What best practices are new? How do you keep engaging? How do you keep on going? So you also have to consider forthcoming opposition. And how do you consider the opposition? Well, you have to maintain momentum, consider legal avenues, and use legal means. There's a couple examples here. One is in Ecuador, where automated speed cameras, there was a lawsuit brought, a protective action brought, and the judge said, okay, well, speed cameras across the entire country should be suspended. And the coalition entered and they came up with an amicus and submitted the amicus to the judge. This amicus is a friend of the court. It's a legal technical document that supports the technical grounding or the technical aspects of speed cameras and why they matter and why they can save lives. Another example is in Mexico, where advocates working on vehicle safety helped pass a very strong, very good regulation on vehicle safety, which requires, among other things, anti-lock brakes and airbags. The industry came in and there was a lot of opposition there. And they were opposing these higher vehicle safety standards because in their mind, it implied higher costs, and that meant that they would sell fewer cars. And so how do you address that? How do you attack the industry who is actively going against something that you want? And you have to be really creative, and you have to be very much on message. So those are just a couple examples of how policy comes in, and then you have to defend it. Next slide. And then refining the campaign. I mentioned this before, celebrating success. That's so key because you think you get to the end of something and you celebrate a lot and you think, okay, that's great, we're done. That is hardly ever the case, again, because laws are seldom perfect, regulations are seldom perfect, and then best practice continues to evolve. So how do you continue involving people? That becomes the next question. And again, celebrating success is a great way to keep people engaged. That also reinvigorates the community. It helps you stay in touch. It allows you to reassess the risks and opposition. And like I said at the beginning with that first slide, you might go from step 1 to step 5, or maybe you're at step 2 or you're at step 5 and you realize there's gaps. That takes you back to step 1, and then you keep on going. And that's kind of how the process of advocacy just keeps on evolving.
Great. Thanks, Jake. I'm just going to talk briefly about communication strategies in support of and after policy wins. I think as complicated as the political path can be, the communication strategies can also be complex, and figuring out how to communicate with the public during and after policy wins is really important, and in some ways is even more important than during the policy passage period. So excited to talk a little bit about kind of what we've seen and some best practices. Again, we're building off of this campaign phase cycle. And so we talked about at the beginning of the series, focusing on public awareness, and then bringing the conversation to issue urgency, starting to talk specifically about the need for change, and then direct policy advocacy. And post 10 is interesting because then it kind of bifurcates, and could be different ways that public awareness and issue advocacy take part in the post-policy passage phase. And I think that communications plays a really vital role, especially as you're rolling out different pieces of the regulations, whether that be enforcement or what that looks like. So I think the key for this phase is figuring out how to use clear and concise language and visuals across all media to emphasize easy ways for people to comply with the rules. I think this is most easily seen through child restraints and helmets, where we see it's really important to use digital media to provide people the information so that they can purchase and use properly the different items needed, the different child restraints and the helmets. And so I think we have seen lots of different campaigns use digital media and earned media to communicate with the public during this phase, and really to kind of bring people in further to understand why complying with the new laws is important and save lives, but also how to do so, because sometimes people are aware of new rules and regulations, but not fully aware of best practices and how to comply with the regulations. So really important. I think we have a lot of great examples, both in the campaign highlights and in the on the webpage that we're going to share with you a little bit later. I think again, key to any phase in communications is making the making the points that you're making with personal stories. And so I think focusing on positive aspects of enforcement, because we've seen that sometimes the narrative can be negative, especially if it's implementation of fines and other things that can be complicated to message around. So figuring out how to tell personal stories of how these new policies and its implementation are saving lives and saving real lives is really important. And I think, when we think about this post-policy passage phase, usually we think about, people taking part in the advocacy campaign during that phase 10, advocating for the policy passage, but it can be really important to engage audiences in taking action during this phase as well, and to kind of demonstrate to their audiences that either wearing a helmet or using a child restraint is easy and saves lives. And so I think a lot of different campaigns have used contests, have used pledges, have used photo campaigns to try and support campaigns as their regulations are being rolled out for the public. And then last but not least, different ways to leverage earned media, both across digital media and in communicating with the public. I think earned and digital work in tandem. And so if there will always be unfortunately news stories around tragedies, and so thinking about also how to leverage news stories where tragedy was avoided because of policy, and to share news across social media and with decision makers directly, I think is really important in this phase as well. And with that, I will pass it off to Judith. We're going to have conversations later that will be involved into. If you have questions, we're happy to discuss both with the campaign highlights and from the presentations we just gave.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon from Uganda, and good morning in the US. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, my camera might my video might have a few challenges, which I'm trying to rectify, but I'll continue. So as introduced, my name is Judith Karara. I work with the Ministry of Works and Transport as a senior road safety officer, and my commissioner is online, Mr. Katushabe. Thank you very much for the support. I will be presenting about the National Road Safety Action Plan for Uganda, which is a 5-year plan, as we will see ahead. Develop this and have it work. If there's a link that will be showing at the bottom. Look, if you could, if anyone would like to download the plan and have a look at it, please feel free. Yeah, and then I could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the background, like I've already said, the Ministry of Works and Transport partnered with the civil society organizations and all other stakeholders in Uganda to develop the National Road Safety Action Plan. This came out of the global plan that was handed over to the Minister of Works and Transport by a representative from the civil society organizations in Uganda, Ovita. So we formed a committee, a technical committee was formed and we followed the recommendation from the global plan to partner and to collaborate with all stakeholders. So a committee was formed with representatives from all the key stakeholders, including the civil society organizations. So we drafted the plan, it went through the formal channels, and this followed also the safe system approach and all the recommendations with short, medium, and long-term plans. This is a five-year plan, which is supposed to end in 2026. The plan was costed, and all the activities for all the key partners or key players in road safety for Uganda highlighted. Next slide, please. So that is our minister. The plan was launched last year in October. And this launch was actually supported and funded by the Global Health Advocacy Incubator. So we thank you very much again. And we set the ground moving. Next slide. We had challenges along the way after the plan and implementing this plan. One of the biggest challenges that we had is the little or inadequate political will and support from the highest political level in the country. And that is, if it is our wish that we would have the president or the cabinet ministers at that highest level to support and come out strongly for road safety, for it to get the support that it needs and the action that is required. So that is one of the challenges. The second challenge is, of course, the funding, limited funding for road safety interventions. As I've said, the plan was costed, and it is estimated to cost the country about $160 million in the 5 years that it is going to be implemented. And this is yet to be realized from the government coffers because there's a general limitation of funds. So yeah, that's one of the challenges we are facing with as regards implementation of the plan. And the last challenge, which is the third, is we have low appreciation of engineering for safety, for road safety among the road safety infrastructure engineers. This is something we did not anticipate when we were coming up with the plan. We did not know we would meet this, but along the way in the implementation, we've met it as a challenge that the people who are charged with the infrastructure development are more interested in the number of kilometers of road produced or they developed rather than how safe this road is. So this is another challenge we have had to handle with as a country or as implementing agency in the ministry. We have a coalition in Uganda. Next slide. We have been lucky in Uganda that for us, all the road safety stakeholders, the civil society organizations, formed a coalition, and they have come together under one umbrella organization, which is called ROSACU in short, which in full is Road Safety Advocacy Coalition Uganda. And this coalition it is still growing. It hasn't been here for long, but it has done tremendous work for us as a government. So as regards education, civil society under ROSACU took it upon themselves to do research. They've come up with reports. As you can see, those are some of their reports they've done. They did research on helmet use. They did research on the legal framework. They did research on speed. They did research and training on media coverage and media reporting for road safety. So these are great tools that we are using as a ministry. They've also done a lot to do with education in schools, as you can see, and training journalists, training even the public and the leaders, the government leaders on good quality helmets, and all other issues of road safety. So as regards education, we've got a good partner. So with the limitation of funds that we have this coalition coming in and doing great to support the work that the government does. So it's a big win for us regarding collaboration or partnership with civil society as regards education. The next slide, please. So as government, our role and the Ministry of Works and Transport, for which I work, we are charged with policy and legal framework development. As the lead agency for road safety in Uganda, the ministry is the lead agency. We are also charged with the overall coordination and leadership for road safety in road safety implementation and interventions in Uganda. So we are also charged with the infrastructure development as regarding construction of roads, safe roads, and ensuring all the safety measures are in place in infrastructure-wise, as well as enforcement. And we do that, enforcement is done by the Uganda Police Force. They have a directorate that is charged with specifically road safety enforcement. And we work with the civil society, and how we do it is just in this picture, like just you see this picture, we communicate, we collaborate, we cooperate, we trust one another, we support one another, and we discuss, we dialogue every step of the way. It is not the same in the past. In the past, we've had fights and different not good interactions with the civil society, but the new approach that we took on, especially with even this global plan and then the national action plan, we are collaborating. So civil society does research, does advocacy, because you know, as a ministry, we may not be able to advocate on our part. So they do advocacy, and they also do media campaigns. They help us a lot with media campaigns, and this has come in to support our work greatly. Next slide, please. Yes, so after the passage of the action plan, what happened was we set the ground moving. And because I've said we had to partner with the civil society, because some of the things we may not do as the ministry being a government entity. So in terms of advocacy, Rosaku came in and they helped us to engage at all levels. So to call for these engagement meetings, we would take part, but it would come, the advocacy bit would be from the civil society organization. And so we met the policymakers, which is the ministry and all other ministries in government that are key to road safety. We've met journalists, they've met parliamentarians who are the lawmakers. Those photos are with Parliament, the different engagements that were held with members of Parliament to seek for their support and also to lobby for the funding, the increased funding for road safety. After the implementation of during the implementation of the plan. So those are the photos. You may recognize Jackie from Global Health Advocacy Incubator, who is playing the lead role in coordinating the Rosaku team. Next slide, please. So what impact have we achieved as a country? As a country, since the plan was launched and all the advocacy campaigns that have been going on, especially with Parliament, we have got a commitment from government to increase road safety funding. First of all, as you can see, that is a newspaper article that was written by one of the journalists that were trained under this project, under the Rosaku projects that are being implemented. And the government agreed to increase road safety funding to a tune of 500 million Uganda shillings. That's about 1,100, about 131 point something thousand US dollars. So about 132,000 US dollars. So that's the commitment we've got from government. We are yet to see this. This was supposed to be in this financial year. So we hope by the end of the financial year, next year, July, we will have seen this increased funding. We have also got increased visibility through the different publications and the several campaigns that have been going on. So road safety is being talked about more, and even government has been encouraged to do their work. So the different government bodies, we have police coming out every now and then regularly to report on the crashes and how many, to give the different statistics, which was not the case in the past. So Ministry of Health doing the work, putting in place post-crash intervention measures. So we have civil society kind of pushing us, if I could say, as government to do our work, and that's a win for everyone in the country. Next slide, please. So what lessons have we learned as a country? The first and most important lesson we have learned is that together we only go far. We can only go far if we are together. We have no alternative but to go far. So we move together with everyone, and this is why the collaboration is important for road safety. So we have learned this lesson, and we are committed to keeping it up, to collaborate with everyone, like the key stakeholders who have road safety at heart. Then we have also learned another lesson that we are going to try to see how to manage, and we are trying to find a way to manage, and that is that the lead agency needs to play the coordination role very well to avoid clashes among stakeholders and to avoid different messages going out. So once you allow everyone to come to the table, once we allow all the stakeholders to come in and the key players and civil society organizations are saying different messages, sometimes this may not be good for the overall goal of road safety. So the lead agency now, as a ministry, in this case, needs to come in and take the lead role and the coordination role seriously and make sure everyone is reporting in the same line that is acceptable. So that's a lesson. Those are two lessons that are key that we have learned. Of course, we've learned many other things, but these are the most important lessons we've learned. And next slide, please. I think that's the last slide, if I'm not mistaken. That's it. So thank you very much. That is it from Uganda. Thank you so much for the opportunity again, GHI, for this opportunity for us as Uganda to present our story. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. And then now we'll move on with Sofía Gordón. And please note that we'll have time for questions after this presentation. We'll actually have breakout groups so that if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the campaigns with the Ugandan Ministry of Works and Transport, you can go to that breakout group. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about the Coalition in Ecuador, you can move to that group as well for some more in-depth questions and discussion. And do we
Buenos
have...
días con todos y con todas. Pues es un gusto para mí estar en este espacio. Bueno, les voy a hablar un poquito de cómo ha sido el trabajo de la Coalición Movilidad Segura Ecuador. La siguiente. Ahí está. Bueno, un poquito para ponerles en contexto. La ley orgánica de tránsito, transporte y seguridad vial, que es como este abanico de regulaciones generales a nivel de país, se emite en el 10 de agosto del 2021. Dentro de esta ley digamos, en ese momento, pues no se contaba todavía con la coalición y algunos grantis que estaban ya en ese momento, pues hicieron también sus aportes y se logró incidir de cierta manera en algunos temas, ¿no? Con relación a seguridad vial dentro de la ley. Y también se logró que la ley tenga como un enfoque en derechos con relación a los sectores vulnerables. Y también una de las cuestiones más importantes aquí que da pie al trabajo que después seguimos es que dentro de esta ley se estimaba un término de 180 días para poder crear el reglamento, es decir, el instrumento normativo que permita que esa ley se ejecute, digamos, en donde se detalla todo el tema, ¿no? Entonces, digamos, para mi forma de ver, el problema fue que la responsabilidad en esta 72ª de la ley es que se le encomendaba a Presidencia elaborar este reglamento y como ustedes saben, pues no siempre dentro de Presidencia se tienen las competencias para hacerlo y por lo tanto no había, digamos, una responsabilidad específica en algún ministerio o en la Agencia Nacional de Tránsito, que es el ente que trabaja el tránsito a nivel general en el Ecuador. Entonces, lo primero que, digamos, fue difícil es como poder identificar nosotros como organizaciones de la sociedad civil de quién era la responsabilidad, a pesar de que dentro de la ley estaba Presidencia. Lo segundo que se hizo fue crear un borrador de reglamento, es decir, nosotros analizamos la ley, toda la ley completamente, y a partir de ahí, pues creamos una propuesta de temas que deberían estar incluidos y detallados en el reglamento. Y digamos, el siguiente paso era como tener este reglamento ya, digamos, elaborado técnicamente, jurídicamente, y luego, digamos, las entidades del gobierno tenían que aprobar el borrador y emitir este reglamento. Este, digamos, es el proceso que debió seguirse en estos 180 días. Sin embargo, como ya les vamos a contar, ya va a cumplir 2 años sin haberse emitido este reglamento, ¿no? La siguiente, por favor. Bueno, uno de los desafíos más importantes, y no sé si ustedes han escuchado, pero hemos tenido como un contexto bastante fuerte de cambios. Como les decía, pues había una capacidad, digamos, no técnica en relación a esta responsabilidad de presidencia, pero también no había una delegación. Pasaron algunos meses sin que la presidencia pudiese delegar al Ministerio de Transporte o a la Agencia Nacional de Tránsito la elaboración de este documento. Y en el marco general del contexto ecuatoriano, hubo inestabilidad de autoridades, ¿no? Por ejemplo, el ministerio tuvo 3 ministros en 2 años de gobierno, la Agencia Nacional de Tránsito cambió 4 veces de dirección ejecutiva, es decir, de quien lidera esta agencia nacional que es, digamos, el organismo rector también de la seguridad vial y del tránsito debajo del ministerio, ¿no? Y a nivel general tuvimos un paro en junio del 2022 y la muerte cruzada, que es esta disolución de la Asamblea por parte de Presidencia en este año, en mayo del 2023. Sin embargo, a pesar de que fue un desafío, pues tener todos estos cambios, creo que también nos permitió tener como un ejercicio de incidencia, porque, por ejemplo, como cambiaban de ministro, nos tocaba otra vez presentarnos, otra vez, pues conversar de los avances que habíamos hecho, de los oficios que habíamos ingresado. Entonces ya se convirtió como en un ejercicio un poco más de rutina, ¿no? Y claro, la tercera vez que ya nos presentamos con el último ministro, pues ya teníamos muchísimos argumentos o mejor trabajados los argumentos, entonces también fue como ejercitar la incidencia. La siguiente. Muchas gracias. Bueno, ¿cuáles han sido los siguientes pasos, digamos, con relación a este inicio de la incidencia? Es que sí tuvimos algunos talleres específicos con quienes trabajaban el reglamento, a quienes se les había delegado. Y estos talleres técnicos nos permitieron como dar también nuestros argumentos técnicos, es decir, que reconozcan que nuestros argumentos no solamente eran de la sociedad civil y basados en experiencia, sino que además estaban basados en buenas prácticas internacionales. No es lo mismo que digamos que Sofía Gordón piensa o opina esto a que la OMS tiene estas cifras y estos son los argumentos de la OMS, ¿no? Entonces, sí fue bastante bueno contar con estas herramientas técnicas. Y yo le mencionaba aquí a la creación de la coalición, porque creemos que ha sido como un gran aporte con relación también a las diferentes organizaciones que forman parte de la coalición, ¿no? Porque cada una de las organizaciones tiene muchísima experiencia, trabaja diferentes temas y ese trabajo, esa experiencia ha permitido también tener una voz autorizada dentro de estos espacios políticos y técnicos, ¿no? Y otra cosa importante también es que se ha incluido el tema de gira de medios de comunicación, sobre todo todavía acá tiene mucho peso los medios tradicionales. Y por esa razón creemos que sí ha tenido también bastante éxito las campañas o estrategias de comunicación en donde hemos incluido estos medios. Sin embargo, también estamos haciendo campañas en redes o hemos hecho campañas en redes en las diferentes redes de las organizaciones, pero también una vez construida la coalición, dentro de las redes de la coalición que ha permitido también como enfocar el trabajo ahí. Y creo que un puntal importante, y por eso está en la base, son estos documentos técnicos, ¿no? Es decir, visitamos a las autoridades, hacemos los oficios, pero sobre todo les damos también argumentos que incluso si es que no conocen ellos dentro de su trabajo, pues les damos a conocer y les damos estas herramientas para que se preparen y puedan tener también otro tipo de discursos, ¿no? La siguiente, por favor. Entonces, dentro de lo que es la educación o cómo reforzamos, digamos, estas herramientas, en primer lugar, pues hemos fortalecido a la coalición. Es decir, si nosotros queremos hacer una incidencia que sea efectiva, es importante que las personas que forman parte las organizaciones tengamos un mismo discurso, o sea, manejemos un mismo lenguaje, estemos de acuerdo en temas básicos para que cuando estemos frente a las autoridades no nos contradigamos. Eso es súper importante. Y por otro lado, también ha sido como una escuela. Creo que muchísimas organizaciones hemos aprendido mucho de este tema, nos hemos especializado en muchos factores de riesgo que tal vez sí los conocíamos superficialmente y ahora pues los manejamos mejor. Y ha sido herramientas bien importantes, por ejemplo, esta campaña que ustedes ven a la derecha, que son campañas testimoniales que se han basado en las experiencias de las personas, que además enfocan este mensaje de no son accidentes, son siniestros, porque son prevenibles, ¿no? También dentro de la época de la pandemia nos ha permitido como estar también en esta lógica virtual, en lo que ha facilitado estos espacios de aprendizaje también a nivel nacional y lógicamente las campañas y espacios voluntarios que dentro de la coalición, por ejemplo, hay organizaciones que voluntariamente han querido hacer conversatorios, han querido hacer como espacios de aprendizaje. Ahí también tenemos la colaboración de ustedes, de GAI, en este sentido de fortalecer pues estas capacidades comunicacionales, pero también técnicas, ¿no? La siguiente, gracias. Si le pasan a la siguiente, ahí está. Entonces, como sociedad civil, nosotros hemos decidido tener una voz técnica, podríamos haber decidido como ser un poco más confrontativos, pero dentro de la coalición decidimos eso, como dar aportes técnicos y eso nos ha implicado esa preparación, pero también como tener otros niveles de incidencia. Las fotos que ustedes ven aquí son de los alcaldes de Riobamba, de Quito, que firmaron un manifiesto por la movilidad segura en donde les brindamos esos insumos para que puedan tomar decisiones también a nivel local y que por otro lado nos permitan dar a conocer el trabajo de la coalición y también aumentar la credibilidad de los argumentos que estamos presentando, ¿no? También hemos invitado a estas acciones, estas actividades a las autoridades, y eso nos ha permitido también convertirnos en actores a nivel comunicacional. Es decir, ahora es mucho más fácil entrar a los medios, solicitar entrevistas, hablar de los diferentes temas, porque ya al fin somos actores reconocidos también desde este ámbito, ¿no? Y dentro del rol de las autoridades, pues han asumido el compromiso, han recibido los aportes. En el caso de Quito, por ejemplo, tienen una agenda de intervención en cruces inseguros. Y sobre todo lo que nos parece importante es que muchos de los argumentos técnicos que les hemos presentado, que les hemos compartido, ahora es parte del discurso propio de estos tomadores de decisiones, ¿no? O sea, escucharles decir siniestros viales en lugar de accidentes, por ejemplo, o hablar de las cifras que les hemos presentado. Para nosotros es un logro, ¿no? Que realmente vaya calando y se hagan voceros también de esta lucha. La siguiente, gracias. Entonces, ¿cuáles han sido las tácticas? Bueno, como les he contado un poquito, tenemos este tema de los medios. También hemos hecho muchas gráficas con relación a los factores de riesgo, y es como, digamos, una estrategia conjunta, ¿no? O sea, al mismo tiempo que estamos elaborando un documento técnico de unas 50 páginas o estamos investigando cómo dar estos argumentos técnicos, al mismo tiempo estamos elaborando las artes para las redes sociales en donde alertamos sobre las cuestiones más importantes, y también estamos haciendo la estrategia de comunicación en medios tradicionales, lo que nos permite como tener una gira de medios, estar hablando en las radios, en la televisión del mismo tema. Entonces, cuando nos piden el documento técnico, lo tenemos listo. Y eso nos ha permitido como tener esta incidencia, ¿no? Eh, digamos que nos vean de esta forma como mucho más técnica. También hemos hecho esta carta de apoyo a nivel de la página web, y cosas como esta que les estamos mostrando acá abajo, esta arte que hoy Ecuador cumple 2 años sin reglamento para la ley de tránsito, ¿no? Entonces son como imágenes bien fuertes que lo que buscamos es que se visibilice este proceso, ¿no? La falencia o la problemática desde, digamos, también otras formas lúdicas de poder hacerlo, ¿no? Por ejemplo, en el caso de las elecciones locales, aprovechamos ese tema para evidenciar si dentro de las candidaturas estaba incluida la seguridad vial, de qué se hablaba, qué decían los candidatos. Y una vez que ya fueron elegidos, pues fue más fácil poder acercarnos y hacerles firmar el manifiesto que están en las fotos anteriores que les habíamos mostrado, ¿no? Entonces, es como un proceso siempre, y tratamos de anclar lo que hacemos con el resultado final. La siguiente, por favor. Entonces, creemos que el impacto justamente es que en estos 2 años de incidencia que tiene la coalición, hemos desarrollado capacidades técnicas, es decir, ahora conocemos muchísimo mejor los marcos legales, los conceptos. Creemos que la capacitación ha logrado que también tengamos mejores habilidades de comunicación, que podamos conocer, digamos, los caminos legales también, de poder incidir, como ya les comentó Jake, el amicus que hicimos fue un ejercicio bien fuerte porque dentro del equipo no tenemos abogados, entonces fue como aprender a decirlo legalmente en un documento no solo técnico, sino además jurídico, entonces fue también un desafío, pero creemos que ahora, pues tal vez un próximo amicus podamos hacerlo de mejor manera. Las vocerías han sido fortalecidas. Al principio éramos pocos los que hablábamos en medios, ahora se va diversificando las voces, y sobre todo creemos que el acercamiento con las autoridades ya no es tan difícil como lo era al principio, ¿no? Ahora las autoridades nos reconocen, es más, nos invitan. En este último, hace 2 semanas, la última versión del reglamento, que ya lo habíamos como anunciado, hicimos toda esta incidencia y finalmente el mismo gobierno nos invitó a participar en 3 mesas técnicas. Entonces nos sentimos bastante escuchados y escuchadas en el sentido en el que ya no necesitábamos como solamente decirlo en medios, sino que ahora el gobierno nos estaba invitando como actores reconocidos a ser parte de estas observaciones al reglamento. Después de 2 años de trabajo, ¿no? Entonces, ese, digamos, fue como el mayor impacto que hemos logrado. Y finalmente, la siguiente, por favor. Dentro de las lecciones aprendidas, creemos que es importante mantener un mapeo de actores políticos y técnicos, incluso también diríamos comunicacionales. Ese es un desafío en este país que, como les comentaba, tiene muchísimos cambios, pero que de cierta manera los actores son los mismos, no se van cambiando dentro de la institucionalidad, pero van siendo prácticamente los mismos. El desarrollo de capacidades técnicas de incidencia. Creemos que sí es importante como que nos sepamos súper bien los marcos legales y los conceptos. Creemos que todavía es importante seguir incluyendo actores de la sociedad civil. Creemos que en este momento es una nueva etapa el tema de la academia dentro de la coalición y esas voces autorizadas que también la academia con nuevos datos, con investigaciones y también con sus estudiantes, pues nos permiten tener otras voces. Y también como esta capacitación constante y fortalecimiento constante de las habilidades de comunicación, ¿no? Para poder tratar estos temas específicos de la mejor manera, porque tal vez podemos conocer, pero tal vez no los comunicamos de la mejor manera y ahí, digamos, está el reto, además de ser bastantes miembros dentro de la coalición. Y conseguir esta relación directa con técnicos y autoridades. Aquí en el país hay mucho movimiento de autoridades, pero es posible que los técnicos de carrera, sobre todo, puedan mantener pues estos lazos y estos conocimientos dentro de las instituciones, ¿no? Igualmente incluir a funcionarios públicos, como les decía. Eso, muchas gracias.
Sofía, muchas gracias a ti. All right, so I think now we can open up the floor for any questions or comments for both Sofía Gordón and for Judith Karara from the Ministry of Works and Transport. If anybody has any questions or comments that they would like to make. Jake, you have your hand raised.
Sí, bueno, nada más que quisiera felicitarlos, Sofi, la gente de Compas de la coalición. Ha sido un trabajo de hormiga y ustedes han cumplido con todo y sé que tienen un peso cada vez más importante, un papel cada vez más importante con el gobierno, con la sociedad civil, con los otros actores. Entonces, ha sido una experiencia, bueno, desde mi perspectiva, ah, ah, muy buena, muy productiva, muy fructífera, quizás muy difícil, pero están viendo aquí los frutos y espero que puedan seguir en esta línea porque estamos viendo por lo menos desde afuera, ¿no? Que el trabajo sí ha tenido un gran impacto. Entonces, que sigan y muchísimas gracias por nuestra parte, por haber cumplido con todo e ir más allá. Entonces, de nuevo, felicitaciones.
Yo también quisiera añadir a esas palabras porque verdaderamente con todos los desafíos que han tenido, siguen adelante y además de no se dejan echar para atrás y como has dicho, Sophie, se van instruyendo más, van aprendiendo más y incorporando esos aprendizajes para ser más efectivo y la coordinación y la colaboración entre ustedes es un gran ejemplo para muchas otras coaliciones con que trabajamos. Así que reitero las felicidades y las palabras de Jake. Muchas gracias. Es un honor trabajar con ustedes.
Muchísimas gracias, Jay, Corina. En verdad, pues es un trabajo colectivo que, digamos, en este momento estoy hablando yo, pero somos más de 50 organizaciones y ahorita vamos a contar otra vez y creo que ya vamos a llegar a las 100 personas y organizaciones y es eso, ¿no? Creo que es como fortalecer esas capacidades y poder llegar a cumplir los objetivos que en este momento pues todavía sigue siendo el reglamento y algunos otros que están dentro de la complejidad de nuestros cambios, pero sin embargo creo que ya poder tener como el discurso claro es súper importante. Entonces, también gracias a Guy por ese apoyo, que creo que en comunicación con ICARE y todos estos temas, pues ustedes han sido también parte de esto.
Okay, do we have some additional comments or questions for either Sophia or Judith? We can, you can unmute yourself or you can include your question in the chat if you would like. Okay, so with that, we can just go ahead and break out into the breakout rooms, right, Luke? Can you provide some guidance on how we're gonna do that with the participants?
Yep. I'm gonna go ahead and create 2 breakout rooms. And it's going to let you choose between the 2 breakout rooms, and then we'll have just a little bit of more space for conversation. And then we'll come back and talk about the resources and the other opportunities that we have for you all. And yeah, so I'm going to create the rooms right now, and then it'll just take a second to give you the option. One of the rooms, it would be great if we could have Sophie in to answer questions and talk a little bit more about the Ecuador example, and then we'll have Judith in the other room.
Sounds good.
Yes. I think it will ask you to jump into one of the rooms. I'm not sure anybody will be able to stay here to hear you. No, the interpretation was, yeah, yep.
So you can join the Ecuador discussion or the Uganda discussion. And I see on the bottom of my screen a breakout rooms box. So you can go there and see if that works. Let us know if that works for you, William.
Okay.
Okay, great. So you go to the more, there's a more button on the bottom of the Zoom. And then at the bottom, there's breakout rooms. Luke, can you share on your screen how you can see the breakout rooms, if you can see it on your end?
Yeah. Let me stop. Is the breakout rooms, are you able to see
If you go to
my,
the more button on the
Yep.
bottom right.
and then if you click the 3 buttons,
Yep.
there's breakout rooms underneath there, and you're able to join. I can also assign people to breakout rooms if that's easier, if some people are having trouble.
All right, so is everybody in a breakout room now? I think we have.
It looks like we have about 20 people in breakout rooms, or a
Okay.
couple, I'm not sure if they are maybe on and not participating. I have a couple people.
Is there anyone that can hear us on in this room that would like to join a specific breakout room, and Lou can assign you accordingly?
Yes, we'll be coming back in 10 minutes. So yeah, that would be great. We'll just give, okay. Yeah. Cindy, do you want me to put you in a room?
Yes, can you add me to the Uganda room?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adriana and Susanna. We're we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Wait.
Okay, so I think we're all in the process of getting back to the main room. We'll just give folks a minute or so. Okay, so I think we have mostly everybody back in the main room. Sophia, do you want to get started with just a quick overview of what was discussed? Anything that resonated from the discussion you just had?
Sí, lo que conversamos un poquito con relación a las preguntas es cómo se maneja el discurso, digamos, este discurso técnico, cómo se decidió el discurso técnico y cómo, digamos, también está atravesado por esta demanda, ¿no? O sea, como esta presión. El ejemplo que nos daba nuestra compañera de Colombia era el cumpleaños que habíamos planificado ahí en redes, ¿no? Que era como una forma, digamos, no irrespetuosa, pero sí de demandar y de presionar a las autoridades y cómo hacíamos como este equilibrio en ese discurso, ¿no? Entonces nosotros les contábamos que era una decisión que se tomó en Asamblea General. Generalmente la coalición toma decisiones así en su Asamblea General. Y así fue como decidimos tener también ese tinte y que nos ha dado buenos resultados también, ¿no? Ser como entre técnicos, pero no perder también eso de la sociedad civil que puede también dejar en vista, digamos, estas problemáticas y nuestras demandas, ¿no? Por otro lado, también cómo se ha conformado la coalición, cómo vamos añadiendo a nuevos miembros y hemos conversado de que cada vez que estamos haciendo una acción, cuando hacemos el manifiesto, cuando los alcaldes se juntan, cuando hacemos diferentes acciones, se van también sumando nuevas organizaciones que están interesadas en aportar y eso también ha sido como un proceso bastante orgánico, ¿no? Y también la coalición les apoya en las agendas relacionadas con movilidad segura. Entonces, es como un ganar-ganar, ¿no? La coalición apoya a las organizaciones en lo que las organizaciones hacen y también las organizaciones apoyan a la agenda general de la coalición. Y finalmente, como ha sido también el reto este del cambio de las autoridades, y creemos que sí es importante, digamos, poder generar procesos sostenidos y que lo estamos haciendo a través de los funcionarios de carrera, que son aquellos que tienen nombramiento dentro de las instituciones públicas, pero que sí es realmente desgastante también, ¿no? Como estar en este volver a contar, volver a convencer. Y cuando tenemos actores aliados que conocen sobre el tema es muchísimo más fácil. Entonces, deberíamos ir también por ahí, ¿no? Como demandar que las autoridades de las instituciones cada vez más sean más técnicos, conozcan sobre el tema y no sean tan cargos políticos, ¿no? Que es lo que está pasando en muchos casos. Y también finalmente, que fue la primera pregunta, es cómo el nuevo gobierno, digamos, o cómo es la oportunidad con el nuevo gobierno de poder realmente emitir un reglamento, pero un reglamento que sea bueno, ¿no? Un reglamento que tenga estas buenas prácticas y que permita salvar vidas una vez que se implemente. Entonces, ese es nuestro reto. Creemos que sí podemos convencer al gobierno de eso, sobre todo porque es un gobierno corto y que está como en campaña electoral para el 2025. Entonces, creemos que sí es posible venderle la idea de que sacando el reglamento, pues ha cumplido con la ley y ha empezado a salvar vidas.
Okay, Sophia, muchas gracias. Judith, do you want to provide just a really brief recap? I realize that we're almost at time for the end of the webinar. but maybe just a brief recap. Judith, you might be on mute.
Okay. Hello, thank you. So just a quick brief recap from our room. We discussed about the plans for that the Ministry of Works and Transport has, especially for the next quarter, that is the first quarter of next year. And as a ministry, we plan to have a media campaign that we hope will last a long period. That will be determined by the funding. But there was willingness from the civil society coalition that we have, Rosaku, and their media working group is much willing to work with us. We've worked with them in the past, and so we have agreed we'll continue to work with them, and we'll have more discussions on the plan for next year in tomorrow's meeting, which we are going to have with our stakeholders on how to have the road safety week, which we are having in Uganda next week before the festive period, and then to discuss even the plans for next year. The other issue was on sharing the webinar materials, and Cindy promised that everyone on email, using the email address that was registered, will receive all the materials that were discussed, the slides and everything that was shared during this webinar. I think that is it. Did I forget anything, Cindy? And the media campaign will be on the risk factors, the 5 key risk factors that we are working with. Yeah.
Thank you, Judith. No, I think you captured everything. And on that note of the webinar materials, on this next slide here that Luke is sharing, it's just a screenshot of the materials that you can find on our website. If you go to the next page or the next slide, Luke. So on that web page, you will see the social media graphic templates that we've developed for this webinar that you can use and customize for your campaigns for your country. And then there's also a worksheet to think a little bit more about how you can continue refining your campaign when you're close to the policy win or even after the policy win. I know Jake had talked about the importance of continuing to refine that even long after the policy win. So these are some of the materials you can find online, and we will email you this recorded presentation, the PowerPoint, and a link where you can download these materials with whatever email you used to register for this meeting. We will email that same email 2 to 3 days from now with the recording. Next slide, please. And the final thing for today's webinar is we really value the feedback that you provide on some of the content that you saw today, some of the topics that you heard from today. So Luke is going to enter into the chat a survey. It takes 5 minutes. I think there must be like 5 questions. So if you can take some time to just let us know what your thoughts are about this webinar, if there are any other topics that you want to learn about, or things that really resonated with you, please let us know. And that's going to help us plan future webinars or platforms like this where we can get everybody speaking and sharing success stories and challenges. So please take a minute to do that. And Luke, is that in the chat? Yeah, great. Thank you. And then finally, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, everyone for joining the series. Look out for the materials coming up soon. And then a special thank you to Judith and Sofía for sharing with us a lot of the work that they've done over the past couple of months and sharing what they're looking forward to next year as well. So thank you, everybody. We hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, GHAI, and everyone for attending and participating.
Thank you, Judith.
Igualmente, gracias a todos y todas. Gracias por este espacio. Gracias,
Gracias, Sofía. Muchas gracias por todo.
Felicidades. Thank you, Judith. Great job, everyone. Have a nice evening, afternoon, morning.
Luego, bye, gracias.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you and bye. Did this get shut? No, 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 no.